So are you good at planning and getting things done, or are you just good at making to-do lists? I think sometimes we feel like we're being really organized and we're planning when we make these massive to-do lists, but unfortunately, if you can't actually get through that list and get those things done, you haven't actually done anything. And trust me, I've been there. I've definitely made long lists of things that I need to do, and I start feeling better because I'm getting it out of my head, but then I just get stuck and frozen and have no motivation to actually tackle that list because it's so long and it feels like I'm never gonna get through it anyways. So today I'm gonna give you guys 5 tips plus a bonus tip on how to actually get things done and get through that to-do list. So tip number 1 is to always give each task a deadline. So have you guys heard of Parkinson's law? Well, what Parkinson's law states is that work expands to fill the time allotted for its completion. And it was first coined by Cyril Northcott Parkinson's. I'll link his book down below. But essentially what it's saying is that your work will fill up whatever time period you give or allocate to it. So for example, if you give yourself a task to be done like a month from now, you're probably not going to do that today. Or maybe even tomorrow, because you know that you have the whole month for it. Whereas if you have a deadline for work, for school that's due tomorrow at the end of the day, you're much more likely to start working on it right now so you can meet that deadline. I mean, of course you have to be realistic. If you're writing like a novel, you obviously can't give yourself 3 minutes and expect to be done a novel, right? So it has to be within reason, but setting a deadline is really important because it'll give you a sense of urgency and help you actually get those things done. So now a really simple way that I do this, or I implement it in my planning, is that instead of looking at this big long to-do list, or I know a lot of us like to do weekly to-do lists, instead of just, picking the items that I'm going to do from that long list each day, I like to actually assign a specific task to a specific day. That way it creates a bit of urgency in that I feel like I have to get that task done that day, and I'll know exactly what tasks I should be doing that day instead of sitting there being like, oh my gosh, which item from this huge list should I start on today? So that's my tip number 1. And tip number 2 is to categorize those tasks. Again, at this point, we're really just trying to break up that super long, never-ending task list into more manageable pieces. Once you have more manageable task lists, then you're much more likely to actually start working on things because you actually feel like it's controllable and you'll actually be able to complete that instead of this dread of well, I'm never gonna get it done anyway, so why should I even start? So my favorite way of categorizing tasks is actually to leverage the next actions concept from the GTD method by David Allen. And essentially here, you're just breaking up your tasks and categorizing them based on the tools or the places you need to be or have in order to get that task done. So for example, say on your to-do list, you might have 1, drop off a package at the post office. 2, pick up apples at the grocery store. 3, email my dad. 4, purchase tickets for an event. And 5, look up a restaurant. So in this example, task number 1 and number 2 require you to be out of the house. And 3 and 5 require you to be in front of the computer. So 2 of the categories would be errands and computer. That way, when I'm already out of the house, for example, I can just take out my errands list and I can just start doing those items because I'm already out and about, and it reduces the friction of me having to put on my coat, get my keys, go in the car. I'm already out, I can just continue doing that. Same concept with being in front of the computer. If you're already at the computer doing a task and you just complete the task, then take out your computer list and start working on those tasks because you're already there. You're much more likely to do it because you've eliminated that friction of doing it because you're already there doing it anyways. Did that make sense? So the whole point here is just to remove the friction to do the task, and it'll make the task much more manageable and much more likely for you to start tackling it. Now, if you've never heard of the GTD method or Getting Things Done by David Allen, I highly recommend that you check out his book, which I will link down below. You can listen to it, you can read it, or I have a video that I'll link up here where I summarize kind of an overview of what the system is, how to implement it in your planner. I actually have a full playlist and I'll link everything there. So if you don't want to read the book or listen to the book, you can just watch my videos. So that's tip number 2. And tip number 3 is to prioritize your tasks. So continuing in the train of making your list more manageable, another key thing to do is actually consider how much time do you actually have in that day. Sometimes I find we allocate or make a list that's just too long. We're never realistically going to get through that list in a day because we just don't have that much time. There's only 24 hours in a day and half of that you're spent sleeping, right? Well, maybe not half, but you know what I mean. So this is where it's really important to start prioritizing those tasks. What are the tasks that you actually have to get done that day? Should be only 1 to 3 key priority tasks. If everything on your list is a priority, then really nothing on that list is a priority. So it should really only be a couple key tasks that you have to get done in that day. Then after those key tasks, you should have maybe some should do tasks. So once you complete those priorities, then you move on to the should do's. But the whole point here is that you now create a subset of that huge long list and only narrow down onto the key things that you need to get done that day. This again will really help reduce the friction to tackling that to-do list, because now instead of sitting there being like, oh my God, what task do I even start with? You've already prioritized the key items you need to do for that day. So I find that this is really helpful. Now, if you have trouble knowing what's an important task or not, you can check out the Eisenhower matrix, which helps you plot tasks based on urgency and importance. I actually talked about it in my recent Franklin Covey method video that I'll link right up here. But basically, after you plot the tasks on this quadrant, you'll of course tackle all of the tasks that are important and urgent. Now, if there's nothing that's really urgent that needs to be done this second, then you should consider tip number 1 and follow the deadlines that you've made for yourself. So that's tip number 3. And tip number 4 is make it fun, or more technically, positive reinforcement. So there's a pretty popular productivity YouTuber named Ali Abdaal, and his whole thing is the biggest productivity hack is really just to do things that are fun or make them fun. And then naturally, you'll just want to do more of it. So for example, for me, when I'm doing my chores like laundry, doing the dishes, I always have my headphones in, my wireless headphones in. And it just makes folding laundry or washing the dishes so much easier. I actually now kind of look forward to it because I know it's a moment in time where I'll get to watch, the 10-minute YouTube video that I've been wanting to watch or listen to the podcast that I've been wanting to listen to. Now, for tasks where you can't do this because you actually have to focus, such as, completing something for work or doing an assignment, etc., then you can give yourself a reward afterwards. So you say, I'm going to finish this task or finish this assignment or finish this whatever it is, then I'll let myself watch the show, listen to the podcast, or whatever you want to do. And this is essentially the psychology of positive reinforcement, which is defined as the introduction of a desirable or pleasant stimulus after a behavior. So I've been doing this for a while now, especially after having kids and you just don't have a lot of time in the day. I really look forward to just having 10 minutes to watch a show or listen to a podcast. And when I'm doing chores and doing those kind of tasks, this is the perfect time to be able to do both. Tip number 5 is time blocking. And this has helped me so tremendously because sometimes we have all the best intentions to do a task or complete a list of tasks, and we're actually really excited to do it, but we just don't have the time in the day, or we didn't properly allocate a time in the day to do it. So this is where I find it's really useful to do time blocking. Now, before I really understood time blocking, I thought you had to be super specific when you were time blocking, like 30 minutes to brush my teeth, 30 minutes to have breakfast, 1 hour to get ready or whatever, right? And you had to do these tiny little chunks throughout the day. And I'm like, I am not spending 30 minutes in my day basically to time block the day and then only to not really follow that schedule. But it wasn't until recently when I revisited the concept of time blocking where I was like, oh, it doesn't actually have to be that specific. I could just allocate a chunk of time for a chunk of tasks. So using the example from tip number 3 where I have those tasks that I have to do in front of the computer, well, I would then slot a chunk of time in my calendar around my appointments and meetings and events to do those computer tasks. So for example, 1 to 3 p.m., say I'm not doing anything, I'll just put computer tasks there. And that way, when I come to that spot in my calendar throughout the day, because I'm always constantly checking what I have to do next on my calendar, I'll know that that's the time that I sit in front of the computer and I do my tasks on the computer. Again, eliminating the friction to think about what I should be doing that time. It's already blocked into my calendar. So I really like doing this because it helps me be realistic with how much time do I actually have in the day. If I have a day where I'm back-to-back meetings, I'm obviously not gonna have any time to do anything, right? But by implementing time blocking, it forces me to go check my calendar, check what I'm having throughout the day, and then if I do have a lull in the day, instead of wasting it when I get to that period and being like, oh, what do I do for the next hour? I've already blocked in what I should be doing during that time. And again, it just reduces the friction and the barrier to getting the items on your task list done. Okay, and now for the bonus tip. And if you guys have made it all the way here, comment down below bonus so I know that you guys have found this video helpful. So this tip is for those of you guys who just can't seem to get started on any task and just find it super daunting, super overwhelming. Well, you can try the 5-minute rule. So for the 5-minute rule is actually a cognitive behavioral therapy technique for procrastination in which you set a goal of doing whatever it is that you would otherwise avoid, but only do it for 5 minutes. So then after the 5 minutes, if you find it super horrible, you're allowed to just stop. But the thought here is that the hardest part of doing anything is just the momentum to get started. And once you actually start doing it, you're likely just gonna continue doing it. And so by only thinking that a task will take 5 minutes, it feels a lot less overwhelming and stressful as well, because you've kind of given yourself this grace to be like, well, you know, it's only 5 minutes, and if I hate it after 5 minutes, I'm allowed to stop and it's okay. So try this one out for those of you guys who are just having a tough time starting anything. I promise once the 5 minutes is over, you're likely just to continue that task until it's done. Do this over and over again, and before you know it, you'll have tackled your entire to-do list. So I hope you guys found this video helpful and informative. If you guys did, please consider subscribing and liking this video so I know that this is the type of content that you guys like. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.